Welcome to the Profits in Pajamas podcast. I'm Danielle D, or Coach Danni D, and I help women entrepreneurs and professionals to achieve their personal success stories that include joy, fulfillment, and balance. This is where we talk about how to build your business in a way that allows you to work with ease, be successful, and enjoy your life. My happy place is spending as much time in my PJs as humanly possible. And I want to help other women find their happy space while running profitable businesses or having a successful career. So get comfortable and let's dig in. Well, welcome to the Profits in Pajamas podcast. I am your host, Coach Danni D. Always here helping you to figure out that work-life balance, get that joy and fulfillment in your life so you can have success right now. So you can have um, a holistic success because a lot of times we associate success with just achievement, right? So this is this common theme that keeps coming up. Usually it's just like theme of the week. This is not even a theme of the week. This is like bigger than that. This is just something that I'm seeing overall. And it's the fear of being seen, right? I am in the middle of writing a rough draft for my second book. The first one hasn't come out yet, but stay tuned. And a lot of it is around confidence and imposter syndrome, because y'all know that's one of the things that I work with. And so in writing that, it's been coming up, in talking to people, it's been coming up. And, there's this fear of being seen, right? And I totally get it because for many, many years, I was definitely the behind the scenes girl. Like, I was very comfortable in being in that space, being behind the scenes, um, let my work speak for itself, girl. Even today, and being more comfortable being in the forefront and being seen, doing podcasts and speaking engagements and interviews and stuff like that, I still kind of like the behind the scenes, if I'm being quite honest. I still really enjoy working on the back end. But I think that that's more because I like operations, right? But there was a time that I definitely would not be doing this. I would not be sitting here and giving you my unfiltered thoughts. I would not be um, intentionally putting myself in places where I am very seen, right? And no, I don't have like, million following or anything like that. That's not what I mean. Just even, putting the content out there for people to consume. And this is a fear that I've talked to, to several different people. And a lot of times, actually, very you know, high achieving, bold personalities that that I would never think would feel this way. Like that I never would think I would get that reaction from. But it's a difference between, standing on a stage. And I can attest to that because I've, had to give presentations in my, when I was employed, there's a difference between standing on stage and reciting content. And I'm going to say this and then I'll clean it up. Content that's not your own, or content that you don't feel ownership of, than content that is personal. And the reason why I said I'm gonna say it and clean it up is even when you did those other presentations, I mean, it was your own. You created the presentation. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes if you work for certain companies, they give you a slide deck and you kind of have to stick to the script, right? But most times, even in those situations, you bring your own flavor to it. You may have created the presentation, but it's still not necessarily personal. It's something about when it gets to be personal, and that usually is tied to your purpose work, that people start to get really shy. And I get it. I totally get it because it is, you know, kind of like that Erica Badu, I'm an artist, I'm personal about it's kind of that vibe, right? You start to get uncomfortable when that happens. And that discomfort leads to hiding. That discomfort leads to hesitation. So you're very passionate about what you do. A lot of times in, a one-on-one conversation or in person, you are, you know, you can't people can't get you to stop talking about what you do. But when it comes time to do that thing in a way that you're exposing yourself to strangers or potential strangers, because when you post something, you have no clue who's going to consume it. There is that hesitation. Um, there is that fear associated with it. And I just want to speak to that a little bit today. One of the things that I found helpful is the more that I have like done my self work and the more that I've worked on the things that were threatening my confidence, right? Because a lot of times, one, for some reason, we don't like talking about confidence because, like, it's like a insecurity about that you may be insecure about certain things. Like, it's weird to me, but I'm accepting the reality of it. I'm working in the reality of it. But truthfully, we all have things that impact our confidence. Your confidence may be impacted by socioeconomic things that have nothing to do with you per se, in the sense that you were just born into this situation. So your confidence may be that you've always had to prove yourself as a Black woman, right? Your confidence, or, if you're not a Black woman, as a woman, your confidence may have been hit by maybe you had a sibling that was, doing way better than you in school or was, the star athlete or whatever it is that you were compared to. That may be an impact on your confidence. Maybe you had some hurdle or obstacle. You might not have been the best student, and so now you don't think that you have what it takes because that has soured, how you view yourself. You may live, like I say, we live in a world where people have certain accepted standard of beauty, right? And so you may have been influenced by that. So you may feel like, because I hear people say, a lot of times, well, I'm going to start, you know, speaking or posting or doing whatever after I lose, okay. I mean, you, there's so many things, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There's so many things that could possibly impact how you view yourself. You may have had a teacher that said that you were, not smart enough or couldn't make it. You may have had a boss who scrutinized you, and so much so that you now, scrutinize yourself. So many different possibilities. I'm sure as I'm speaking, you're thinking of something that is influencing what you think about yourself. It could be just something as simple as you've never seen someone who you identify with do the thing that you want to do. And so you think that it's not open to you. I could go on all day about why. But here's the thing. There's something. There's something that's telling you to hide, to shrink back, to not be that full version of yourself. And I think the biggest thing that you can do to counter that is to learn to love yourself as you are. Not this, yes, we have people out here teaching you how to do social media, people out here teaching you how to run your business or how to excel in your career. And I think a lot of times we think of all of those things as something to morph into, that we got to assimilate, to what those standards are. We see things on social media and we start to try to, like set up our space in that way. We start to change how we wear our hair or, how we do all of these different things to fit in. But we're not meant to fit in. We're meant to stand out. And that's what, the point is. Yes, you're learning. Yes, you're going to get information or best standards or, best practices. But those are to then be processed through who you are. It's to be processed through who you are. So, give an example. Like, you make modifications that work for you because I think what happens is a lot of times is that we will get stuck. Like I, did a webinar last night about being stuck. Sometimes we'll get stuck, but the reason or what's stopping you, what that was the webinar name, what's stopping you. But sometimes we stop because we feel like we're not becoming the thing, that someone else is doing, or we can't figure out how to change ourselves to fit the other person's formula. That's not what this is. You're not changing to fit their formula. You're taking their formula into your world. So you are adapting it to fit your world. Do we have to make changes? Yes. We often have to make changes, but the reason why we have to make changes is not because we are changing the core of who we are. Only changes that you should be making is growth, right? That are growth related, that you are working through something that is holding you back, not I am changing the core of who I am as a person. It's two different things. So you can work within someone else's process or system without losing the core of who you are. So, I mentioned like I'm working on this rough draft. I'm working with a program like to do that, right? And the 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 system of the program is daily writing, which I try to do. Like I'm not trying to do that. But I also met my ADHD behind before. And what I know is there are times when I'm not going to, do well at something daily, but when I'm in hyper focus, I can do a month's worth of work in a day. So I work within that. So I take that thing and I bring it into who I am, marry it together, but knowing I still got to be progressing. So I can't use it as an excuse. And that's why I want to make the distinction. And that's why I gave the example because I can't say, oh, I'm not good at doing things daily. So, and then not do the thing. But I can say, you know what? I know that I'm not going to be able to, and it's not just the ADHD, it's also like just my schedule. And I know that, when I'm moving a lot, I can't like if I need to create, I need stillness, right? So there's certain days that are just busy and those days are usually not going to be good days for me to write. But those days that aren't, right? Then I'm making up for it, right? So I share that example just to say you can learn something new. You can grow in an area that you might not have thought that you could do, but you don't have to, you can't always force yourself into something. But that's why modifications exist. So don't stop, don't stall, don't quit because it kind of makes you uncomfortable. Because uncomfortable and out of character are two different things. Um, if it makes you uncomfortable, keep trying, push yourself to it. And at a certain point, you're going to know the difference between discomfort and um, just misaligned. When you get to that point, it's not, let's throw this away. It's, how do I make this work within my world? How do I make it work? But in order to do that, you got to know yourself. You have to really, really know yourself. And I think that a lot of times we skip over that. We skip over knowing ourselves. We've tied identity to our titles, our um, degrees, our accomplishments. But who are you at the core? And knowing yourself well enough to know, hey, that's probably not gonna work for me. But maybe I could finagle it, like so that this can work. Or maybe I know instantly, hey, that's a no-go for me because I know enough about myself. Like, and that's kind of where I am. Like a lot of times people talk about ideas and I've already like almost instantly going through that process in my head of, okay, this is what's on the table, this is what's happening. Yeah, this is not gonna fit me. And I can go through that very quickly. And it's usually, a lot of times it might even be months later when the same people that were excited about something come back and they're like, oh no, this didn't work because and everybody got to go through their process. But I already knew it because I spent a lot of time self-reflecting and figuring out me and calling me out because again, sometimes we can hide behind who we are, well, that's not gonna work for me. And you haven't really even given, thought to it, or you are rejecting it because it makes you have to do something you don't want to do. Um, That's that's different. That's a different thing. But you have to know yourself well enough to know that as well. You have to know yourself well enough to know when to call yourself out. So I'm saying all this to say, get to know yourself, get to love yourself because, I spoke about confidence. That real confidence comes from a place of love. We talk about, you know, all of these, a lot of times, we think of ourselves in negative ways. You can't build off of negativity. You have to build off of love. So love who you are, learn what you bring to the table, what your gifts are, right? Know that you have worth whether you do anything else, in life or not. You were born with worth. But lean into what makes you special, what your superpowers are, what your spark is, right? Lean into that that love of self brings a different confidence. I've talked before, I'm not going to get too deep into that about internal and external confidence. We can all walk around with our heads high and our shoulders back, and we can all do that. We can all, perform the act of confidence. Internal confidence means we could feel it from the inside out. And I don't mean in the way that, if you killing it today in your look. I mean, that's part of it. I'm not gonna lie. That's part of it when you really are feeling yourself, right? But from the inside out. And it hits different. It just hits different. You see somebody who does not necessarily fit into the like stereotypical beauty standard, and you wonder why they just glowing. They just, they have this energy. That's internal confidence. That's not performative. That's not a show. That's that internal confidence. It comes through, but it's not just a physical thing. It comes through in how you speak about things. It comes through in how you carry yourself across the board, not just in public situation, that you have that comfort. I know for me, just being able to sit here and do this and not have anxiety around it, not be stressed about, well, what did I say? Well, how will they take that? That starts to dissipate as you get comfortable in you and understand who you are, and understand also, I know I have no intention to, because we all worry about getting out here and saying something crazy and getting canceled, right? I have no intention on doing that. Like, that is not my I mean, I can't control how people perceive something, but I know my intention. And even watching people who have large followings go through some of those things, it depends on that person's intention. If that person was always nasty, like attitude or at nasty values, then usually when they finally say that thing that hits people wrong, everything crumbles. But if that person, consistently was, you know, honorable and so on and so forth, even if somebody tries to twist their words, their core following knows that that's not who that person was, or that's not what they were trying to say, or you start to worry less about that type of stuff and start to just show up. Just show up and be you and be good with it, without the overthink, like without the overthink. Like I get it because I've done it, but just think about that for a moment. The fact that we overthink about being ourselves. Like that's so weird, like not weird in the sense that we don't all experience it at some point in time, but I mean weird in the sense that we live in a world that we have to feel like that. So get back to you. And maybe you never like really uncover who you were, because in school, you have your little groups and you might have tried to fit into this group or that group. But who are you at your core? Because it's more complicated than that. Because you might, have been, the nerd in school, and You still identify as a nerd, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there's so many layers to who you are. You there's probably 20 different groups that you fit into, and the cross section of that makes you. So I want to see you. I want to see you come forward. I want to see you out here, sharing in the world and feeling comfortable and confident and not hesitating, not hesitating because just like, you might belong to those 20 groups, there's some there's a group of people that intersect in similar ways, and they may not intersect with all 20, but they might intersect with this 5, and there's some more that intersect with this one, and they all waiting for you. They're all waiting for confirmation from you. Um, I'm gonna share this real quick and I'm jump off. But last night I was scrolling TikTok and I saw a comedian and he started his joke with, he found out that he had ADHD, depression, and anxiety. That was the three things. And he said that as a lead in to the joke. But when he said it, like people in the room like cheered or whatever, and he had kind of jumped because he wasn't expecting that reaction, and he was like, I didn't realize there was a gang of us. So I'm saying that to say there are people who are also not fully them, and they're waiting for you to be you so they could be them, and so we could all just be who we are and be comfortable in that. All right, y'all. I am going to leave you with that. The next challenge up on deck is the calendar detox challenge. We are at mid-year, so it is the perfect time to enroll in that challenge so that you can get the things off of your plate that are keeping you from being aligned with your goals, keeping you from being aligned with um, what is your success story, right? Because a lot of times it's not that we don't have enough time, it's not that we're overwhelmed, it's that, I mean, well, we are overwhelmed, but it's not that we're overwhelmed because we have too much to do, it's because we have the wrong things there, right? We're putting too much energy in things that are not getting us results. That creates overwhelm and burnout. So let's get off that hamster wheel. Let's get into the calendar detox challenge and let's get that together so that we can end out the year actually having accomplished the things that we set out to accomplish. Right now, the Capable Confidence Challenge is running. It'll run again we're in July, August, September. It'll run again in September. And that's what we deal with a lot of what I'm talking about today of getting back to finding you and peeling back all of those narratives that are in your head that are telling you that you can't be you or that telling you that you are not enough. That's the Capable Confidence Challenge. Of course, I always have my success journal, the merch, all of those links are in the show notes. If you're in the balloon community, join me in September in Atlanta. We're going to do the Inflate Your Income, the Business Behind Balloons workshop or a conference in Atlanta. That's going to be like phenomenal. Top tier lineup of instructors, all focused on getting you to building that successful business. We have Adrian who's phenomenal with the foil, so we're gonna have some balloon touching, but the majority of it is going to be around getting that structure behind your business, and all of it is going to be interactive so that you can start making progress before you even leave the conference. We are all action oriented people. So, this is not just, sit and take notes and lecture. No, we're about to get into action. So that's what I have for you guys today. I will see you next week. Thanks for listening to the Prophets in Pajamas podcast. I hope you got some great tips to start working with these. Want to stay connected? Follow me at Your Workflow on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. For more information about creating balance in your life, register for my upcoming calendar detox challenge at CoachDanniD.com. Don't forget to subscribe, join the community, and book a call to find the workflow program that best fits your needs.